Hey, I'm NeverLag, and this is every game I played in January. Usually around New Year's, my brother will come up to visit us for a few days, and we tend to find some smaller, more indie game to play. In years past, it's been Heavenly Bodies or Jump King, and for 2026, that game was Brave Escape. Now, I had heard pretty good things about this game already, but I think both of us, after jumping into it for just a little bit, were surprised at just how good it is, like how well it hit. And so if you're someone who's looking in this genre, if you like cooperative games that demand precision, have that difficulty to them in the puzzle platformer genre, then just go get this. It's really good. We've only played probably the first 20 to 30% of this game so far, as we've kept it strictly local co-op, but it's been excellent. And it is co-op only. You're going to need another body, another human person to play this game with. But there's two characters. There's the robot and the Indiana Jones looking dude. I don't know. Explorer, I guess. Interesting pairing here. But each of them have their own mechanics that play into each other. So the robot starts with the ability to bounce the explorer to higher heights. And the explorer starts with the ability to drop a rope over a ledge for the robot to climb up. And these are very simple mechanics to start, but the game immediately begins to test you and really demand more of you, push the limits of what these two abilities can do. And not only that, but very quickly it starts to introduce new mechanics, such as the robot gaining the ability to grapple from a hook, becoming a temporary platform that can swing back and forth for the explorer. And it's as these abilities start to compound and layer on top of each other that each level essentially becomes a puzzle to be figured out first. You have to really take a look at it and be like, all right, what order do we need to do these things in? And I see what's going on with you. I need you to do this while I'm doing this so that we can ultimately do that. But once you've solved the puzzle, then it becomes a matter of perfecting that puzzle. And it's in the process of perfecting it with your teammate, in sync, precisely coordinated, all ultimately leading to that one perfect run that is just so satisfying. So again, we have not finished this game. We have a long ways to go, so no final verdict here. But I'm sure that we will return to it, and I will report back when we do. All right, moving on to game number 2, we have Elden Ring Nightreign. Obviously, this came out in the middle of 2025, but to be fair, I didn't really think it was for me. I've never really asked for a FromSoft co-op game. I've never engaged with any of their co-op mechanics. I think they've always been pretty bad. And I didn't think I wanted this, and so I put it off. On top of that, it released predominantly as a trio-only game, and our third person can be hard to find at times. So we held off on this game, but once it was announced that they were patching it with the ability to play with 2 people, me and my brother were like, all right, that's good. This might be time to check this out. And then ultimately they had their DLC come out toward the end of 2025. So fast forward, here we are, 2026. It's time to check out Elden Ring Nightreign, see what this is all about. And I learned 2 things about Nightreign upon playing it. The first is that it is a hot mess. You're going to be seeing it here in the footage, but good lord, does this run terribly. I mean, I guess it's not that much of a surprise because Elden Ring ran terribly at launch, but we're like years removed from this game coming out, and it still runs like trash. Maybe it's better on PC. I played on PS5 Pro, and it's unacceptably bad, to be honest. Like, we're talking frames dropping into the teens during action. Really not great. There's also the quality of life features, pretty much non-existent. And then from there, just like basic game mechanics are fairly obscured, not communicated terribly well, which, to be fair, is just kind of a FromSoft staple at this point. But by all accounts, this game should be a disaster, and yet the second thing that I learned about Nightreign almost immediately is that it's just fun. The gameplay loop here is so good that regardless of all of that stuff I just mentioned, we just kept playing it, even through the frustrations. Now, as far as what this game actually is, if you're someone who's been on the outside looking in, like I was, maybe you've played other FromSoft games or other Souls games in general, this game is quite different, to be honest with you. I think the most simple way I could put it is that Nightreign is a hero-based co-op time management game with Souls-like combat. And I think it's important to emphasize the Souls-like combat is there, but the emphasis really is on the time management aspect. It can be played solo, duo, or trio. And I do think it's best played with 3 people. It seems the most balanced for 3 people and just the most fun. But basically, each run consists of 2 nights followed by a 3rd final boss. And so when you start a run, hopefully you and 2 of your friends are going to drop into this map with all kinds of landmarks and locations. And you have a certain amount of time before the goop circle starts to close in on you. So the name of the game is to be as efficient as you can, sprinting around this map from location to location, figuring out what's worth your time. It even leads to interesting moments that you really don't get in a traditional Souls game, where you may start fighting a boss and realize, yeah, we could kill this boss, but you know what, it's actually not worth our time right now to do that because it would take too long. So let's either skip this altogether, or let's come back when we're leveled up a few more levels and this can be done a little more efficiently. So it's really interesting in that way. The name of the game is efficiency, time management. You're basically going to be sprinting, flying, and jumping across this map at breakneck speed. It feels honestly antithetical to like most Souls games, where you're very methodical and you're kind of trudging through the world and fighting these bosses, and maybe these bosses take several minutes and you're trying to, it's a war of attrition almost. But in Nightreign, you don't want none of that. You want to be as quick and efficient as you possibly can. And yet, despite all these differences from what I'm used to in a Souls game, this gameplay loop and just pinning something on the map and hauling butt with your team over to the next location to kill the next boss it's fun. It's just pure joy. Now, as far as the heroes themselves go, there's kind of the cast that you would expect from a Souls game that offer the different playstyles. You can be Unga Bunga Dude, there's casters, there's even a character that has a parry ability that seems to be ripped straight out of Sekiro. My favorite is Iron Eye. He's a mobile bow-wielding character that attacks from range and can provide the team with some damage amplification. And I gotta say, it's one thing that's really nice about Nightreign is I like the Unga Bunga build. I like to go heavy strength, Fugs, just have this big great sword, and I don't experiment too much, but Nightreign allows you to check out all these different playstyles without any investment, without any cost to doing so. And the other thing is, with this bow wielding character, I've never picked up a bow in my life in a Souls game. They're terrible. They don't work very well. They don't do enough damage. They're very cumbersome to use. They're just not a fun tool to use in a Souls game for the most part. And so I've never used them, and yet here in this game, my favorite character uses a bow and can just attack indefinitely with his bow. Don't have to worry about ammunition or anything like that. And so what's really cool is it's opened up a brand new play style that I've never gotten to experience in any of these FromSoft games, and removed the barrier to having fun with it, essentially. And it's just been a blast. So like I'm really excited to have this new way to play a FromSoft game. And then on top of that, to speak a little bit to the bosses, the unique bosses, the Night Lords that you fight at the end of each night, are really good. Like, I didn't think that you could bring the mechanical intensity and just satisfaction and the feeling that you get when you defeat a difficult boss in a FromSoft game is really unique. And I didn't think that would translate very well to co-op. I thought it would either be too easy or too chaotic. And man, I'm shocked and very happy to say that it really works here. This boss list is very good. I like each and every boss. Some of them are a little harder than others, but a few of them are even great, I would say, and led to those moments where you are genuinely like ecstatic after you beat a boss, only this time you're with the homies, and that is really cool. Like, there's no other way to put it. It's just really cool, and I'm shocked at how well it works. And you know what? I didn't know I needed a co-op FromSoft game, and now here we are. This game just works. I would love to see some quality of life improvements that we'll probably never get because it's from software. But yeah, despite this game feeling like it was made by one From Software employee in a cave somewhere with spare parts, it just works. It's fun. I think we're going to continue to play it throughout the year. We haven't even gotten to the DLC yet, so plenty more to play. I bet you they'll even continue to update it into 2026. And on top of that, now that I know I like this gameplay loop, I'm really looking forward to different studios taking a shot at this genre. Really, I think FromSoft have inadvertently or advertently created a brand new genre in their spare time, which is kind of hilarious if you think about it, since they were the ones who started the entire Souls-like genre. But I do think we're going to get Nightreign likes in the next few years. In fact, we just saw one recently announced with Horizon Hunters Gathering, and I'm stoked for it. Like, I think that looks like a lot of fun, so I can't wait to see other companies give this a try, and maybe even make some improvements off of what From Software have started here with Nightreign. Alright, on to game number 3, and if you don't know by now, my name is NeverLag, and I play Wuthering Waves, and I may or may not need help. Would the world be better off without gacha games? Unequivocally, the answer to that question is yes, but here we are with the 3.0 update, and with that come all of the usual tropes of the genre. You've got new characters, new MacGuffins to chase, new story elements, but the real thing that I felt was worth highlighting with this update, and with most of Kuro's updates, is the art design. They continually hit it out of the park with really stunning art design and environments, and it's no different here in Lahairo for the 3.0 update. There's definitely a heavy influence from Death Stranding, of all places, in the environment design, just kind of the feel of the world, alongside the fact that the new traversal mechanic for the region is a motorcycle, and one of the game mechanics has you going around the world allocating resources to various highway points to repair and rebuild the road. Very Death Stranding coded. But add on top of that just kind of this also fantasy cybertronic element, and the enemies have a bit of a Kingdom Hearts design aesthetic to them. All of it comes together to create something pretty cool and unique and really interesting to look at. Apart from that, it really is just a gacha game. It's all about the characters, the combat. I will say the combat in Wuthering Waves is by far my favorite in any of these games, and it continues to be. It really kind of straddles this line between something that feels a touch Souls-like, but really is way more flashy and feels a little more Devil May Cry maybe, but there is skill expression in creating your teams, making sure they have all of the gear that they need, really building these units, and learning how to play them. Each team plays quite different from the next, so it's a game I enjoy, unfortunately, and it's a game that I probably will continue to enjoy throughout 2026, but I thought it was worth mentioning in January because with this update, it really did end up being a fairly memorable experience. But also don't play gacha games. Alright, moving on to game number 4, we have Ship of Fools. Now this is a game that I tried at least twice, I think, to play with my brother, and neither time did it really stick, so I kind of thought this game was doomed to fall into the digital pile of backlog irrelevance for all eternity. But one date night, my wife and I, we had a projector, we had takeout food, we just needed to figure out what game to play. And as I was scrolling through my games list, it was then that I saw Ship of Fools in a brand new light, and I thought, you know what? This game is like Overcooked. And Overcooked is probably my wife's favorite game of all time. She doesn't play many video games, but she loves Overcooked. And conversely, my brother hates Overcooked. So maybe this was the solution. Maybe this is what was needed all along. And sure enough, it stuck. Still to this day, she continues to ask me to play Ship of Fools. And I will say, I even think it's pretty fun. I personally enjoy the game as well. It's essentially a co-op roguelite where two people man a ship. You have to load the cannons, fire the cannons, move the cannons around the ship, as well as juggle melee enemies on board the ship. Very chaotic. You will clear waves of enemies and then go to the typical roguelite map that we're all familiar with from the last 5 years, where you select your next destination and kind of carve a path based on what you want next, whether that is a power-up or shields for the ship, shops to buy new trinkets, or upgrades for your ship to kind of help create builds. And all of this culminates in a boss at the end of the map that is usually a kraken or some type of nautical monstrosity. And then you rinse and repeat this a few times until you reach the final boss. So it's a traditional roguelite. It's what we're used to. But the moment-to-moment gameplay is very much Overcooked-esque in that you are kind of running around the ship with your hair on fire, trying to coordinate as best you can with your teammate while not hitting them with your paddle, and kind of delegating and figuring out who is doing what task when. And it's fun to play. It's frustrating, it's chaotic. As far as a few critiques go, I would say the build diversity is maybe a little lacking for something that you would want in a roguelite. Those roguelite elements maybe are a little watered down. Characters that you can unlock, they all have intrinsic traits, which means if you want a specific trait, you have to play as that character. And I don't know, in this kind of game, I really would have rathered that the characters had been cosmetic so that I could pick the trait I want and play as the character I want and not have to be dweeby looking fish boy, you know what I'm saying? But that's a small complaint, just a small quality of life feature. The other thing I'll say is this game has friendly fire, which I don't think that was a good call. I understand what they were maybe thinking by leaning into the chaos of it all, but in a game where you're working cooperatively with your teammate and there can be so many enemies on screen at one time that you're trying to deal with, to be hit to the ground or knocked off cannons constantly by your teammate who's just trying to use their melee in the middle of Armageddon is just, it feels bad. It's not fun, it's not enjoyable, it doesn't add anything to the experience other than frustration. So yeah, there's a few elements, as with any game, that I kind of wish were a little bit different, but all of that said, this is a fun game to play with a friend. It's got that one more run hook that you want from a roguelite. It honestly has a bit of a skill ceiling as well. I know the both of us have gone from thinking something was like legitimately impossible to finding that we've both improved enough at the game that we're like a well-oiled machine. We're handling things that we once thought were impossible, which is a really good thing to see in a game like this, and it's very satisfying to feel that sense of progression over time. So yeah, that's Ship of Fools. I'm glad that I gave it a third chance. I really have had fun with it, and again, I do think that the best comparison for this game is Overcooked. So if you like those games, if you have someone you like to play those types of games with, this is one of those. Give it a try. Game number 6 is another co-op game. Apparently I played a lot of co-op games in January, I'm realizing as I'm recording all of this. But yeah, I think the one word I would use to describe LEGO Voyagers is quaint, which is neither good nor bad. It's just quaint, and I think we played this in one night. I could be wrong. At max, it was 2 nights over the course of a weekend. I think the runtime is 4 or 5 hours, depending on how you play. It has elements that I would say are similar to a Journey, where the gameplay is definitely on the simple side. It's definitely more about the journey, the experience, the Lego-ness of it all. But that said, there are some really cool set piece and puzzle moments that I think we were both glad that we stuck with this game, even though there were some slower moments where we were thinking, maybe we're too bored. But I just wish that those moments weren't so few and far between, because they are really cool. There's spots where you're controlling a vehicle with your teammate, whether it's a boat or a truck. And like I said, there's a couple really cool puzzles in this game. All in all, if you're looking for co-op experiences, we're getting more and more of these now, but there still aren't a ton of them. And I would say that this is a solid experience. And it's also one it's fairly short. It doesn't really overstay its welcome. Like I said, you can play it in 4 or 5 hours. So we had a good time with it. All right, on to game number 6, and no more of this co-op nonsense, because we are on to the first Berserker, Khazan. which is another holdover from 2025 I did not get to. And here in January, I finally did. And I gotta say, what a game. Really, honestly, what a game. Really, really enjoyed my time with Khazan. I was hesitant coming into this game because I had heard various design elements were similar to Neo. You've got more of a mission-based setup rather than a fully interconnected world to explore like something like Dark Souls or Lies of P. And you also have randomized loot, which both of those things I'm not a big fan of in Neo. I actually have never been able to really click with Neo despite trying a few times. So I was worried that Khazan was gonna have the same fate for me personally, but I am happy to report that even though those things I still never came to love in Khazan, the combat is so freaking good in this game that it more than outweighed any dislike I had for any other feature. I would definitely say that this game is pretty much 50% Neo, 50% Sekiro, and with a tinge of like Borderlands art style, which I really like. I really like the art style, so that helps. That always helps for me when I enjoy the visual presentation of the game. And I will say the level design, despite being mission-based, is still solid. You're still going to get some pretty good level design, levels that wrap around and have cool shortcuts and some cool visual locations. But you definitely are missing that true interconnected exploration of a world. And I wish this game had that, but it didn't. The story is solid. I enjoyed it enough in my first playthrough, but by the time I got to the end, there's some really cool story moments that kind of had me going, man, I might need to replay this and pay a little bit more attention, honestly, to some of these characters and what's going on. And I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, really, it's just the combat. The combat in this game is so good. In fact, here's a hot take for you. I think Khazan may very well... Actually, you know what? I'll just say it's in the discussion that Khazan may have the best combat of any Souls-like game I've ever played. And in my opinion, that would be against like Sekiro or Lies of P. And I'm not ready to say it definitively, but it is definitely in the conversation, and I think it honestly could be the best combat I've ever experienced. And it's just, whether we're talking about sound design, just mechanics, the way things connect, even from the very beginning of the game, it's very, very satisfying. But then the way that the combat evolves and just the amount of depth that can be had in this combat system by the time you reach the end game and the final bosses was just so good. And yeah, there are 3 weapons that you can choose from. You've got the greatsword, the dual axes, and the spear. And each weapon has its own skill tree. So as you gain experience, you get skill points. You can put them into the skill tree of the weapon you are using. But at any time, you can refund all your skill points for free, switch them around, switch your weapons. Very nice quality of life situation. But I will say, I never really used it because I picked the greatsword and I stuck with it throughout the entire playthrough. I loved it. This greatsword is so chunky. I mean, honestly, it would make Fugs blush. Like, it's just so satisfying and chunky to use. And just the sound design and haptics of when the sword would hit and when you swing the sword, the weight that you would feel. Very good weapon. And the other part of it is that as I played with the greatsword throughout my entire playthrough, you unlock skill points, you put them in the skill tree, and you gain new abilities to use with these weapons that are like different inputs. And I genuinely felt that as I played through this game, especially as I got about halfway through and toward the end, my skill ceiling with the greatsword was to a point where if I were to switch weapons, I felt like I would be resetting my skill back to 0. I'd have to relearn how to play the game. And that could be a negative, but I think it's really cool because I wish I had the time to replay this game with like the dual axes. They're really cool and I wanted to play with them, but I just was so heavily invested in the greatsword. And the other thing about it is that by the end of the game, when I have all of these different abilities with my greatsword, and I've kind of learned, which situation to use specific abilities in, and oh, I can chain this ability into that ability. It almost felt, I've never experienced this in a Souls game, but it almost felt like a fighting game where I had combos, and it's like the base of the game is, yes, it's Souls. I'm dodging, I'm parrying, I'm attacking with light and heavy attacks, but interwoven into that combat, I'm using these different abilities that I have, depending on the scenario. I had one ability where if I used it, it would basically supercharge the great sword, and from that point forward for like 30 seconds, if I charged any attack, it would create an AoE blast around me that would do damage to enemies or like the boss if you're right next to him. And so I would make sure to always have that ability up because it's just free damage when I'm charging other moves. Now couple that with the fact that this game has armor sets, and if you wear all of the armor for one set, you get a set bonus along with different stats. One of the armor sets I had at the end of the game had an armor set bonus that essentially unlocked a brand new move where when I parry, if I immediately attack, I can attack very quickly, which is nice because the greatsword is kind of slow. But after that, I can then charge an R2 attack. And so with that armor bonus, it essentially allowed me to charge that R2 attack for much longer, like 7 to 10 seconds. And so if I had done that previous ability and my greatsword was supercharged, then I could do splash damage to the boss that entire time as I'm charging a big R2 attack to do even more damage. So nerdy stuff, I know, very nerdy stuff, but really what it amounted to is kind of a sense of skill expression that I've never experienced in a Souls game that almost brought it like, just like 20% of the way toward like a fighting game, which I don't even love fighting games, but it was really satisfying. And there's a whole other 2 weapons to experience that with, not even to mention the fact that there are different builds and different abilities with the greatsword that I didn't even make use of. So really, really satisfying combat in this game. Can't recommend the combat enough. Branching off from there, combat is really only as good as the enemies that you're facing, and especially the boss list in Khazan is just top tier across the board. I don't think there was one boss that I genuinely disliked or thought was really poorly designed, and there's several bosses in this game that really would shake up my top 10, top 20 bosses of all time. So really, really good bosses in this game. And not to go on too much of a tangent here, but to me it feels like FromSoft have a little bit lost their way recently when it comes to constantly trying to one-up themselves with boss difficulty. I think of Millennia or Consort Radon, and it's kind of at the cost of fun, really. Like, these bosses are just difficult to read, difficult to understand their movesets and their hitboxes. None of it feels properly conveyed to the player, or like the player has a proper way to punish the boss. But here in Khazan, I was really, really impressed at the quality of boss design and just how time and time again they were able to bring a new boss that had very fun mechanics to learn, and it felt like pretty much all of their movesets were clearly communicated to the player. And then there's plenty of proper punish windows as well, if you drain the boss's stamina, if you stagger them. So yeah, just excellent boss design from start to finish. The final boss of this game is an all-timer for sure. And then even beyond that, just the mini bosses, the regular enemies that you'll fight throughout the game are fun to fight. They're fun encounters. There's a decent amount of variety, and I looked forward to each and every combat encounter, which I think is the best thing you can say about any game that focuses on its combat. Now, if I had to pick one thing to be critical of in Khazan, I think it would be the visuals and some of the settings. I really do like the art style and just the design of the enemies and things, but all too often it can feel like there's this ugly, muddy sepia filter over the game that just makes everything look monotone, gray, brown. Toward the middle of the game, you reach kind of like this broken down city area, and I swear everything looked exactly the same, and it was just very, very bland, very boring to look at. And I feel like this game deserved a lot better from an art design standpoint and a visual representation with maybe just a little more color, something a little bit more scenic, but not the end of the world. And this game is in the 9 out of 10 range, I would say, and it will certainly slide into my top 10 Souls-likes of all time, even making a case for top 5. Alright, it was a full month, but this is my 7th and final game I played in January, Dispatch. Now, I'm not a big fan of the choose your own adventure narrative type of games. I usually just find myself wishing that it was a TV show and bored out of my mind during the gameplay that seems only to be there to justify the fact that it's a video game and not actually bring anything meaningful to the table. But here we are with Dispatch, and I really think that this should be the blueprint for any of these games going forward. They struck a near perfect balance, in my opinion, of gameplay to show. I would say it's around 70% show, 30% gameplay. They have the option to turn QTEs off, which I did. I did not miss them whatsoever. And I mostly watched this as a show, made some key decisions, and then the gameplay segments in this game consist of basically a time and resource management minigame that perfectly synergize with the story because you are a dispatcher. So you'll go into these gameplay segments during your work shift where you are dispatching your crew of eclectic heroes out to various jobs and crises throughout the town, trying to pick the best fit for each job. After, each job takes a certain amount of time to complete, then they have to come back and rest. So you're really trying to juggle this crew of heroes, make sure that you have someone available if something comes up, and inevitably chaos ensues. It's also, like I said, really interwoven into the story excellently, in that you'll have a lot of banter between your teammates, and parts of the story will impact your gameplay where your team will be fighting and they'll start sabotaging each other and just really screwing over your entire shift in a way that can be frustrating, but is just very thematic with the story and adds to the immersion of it all. And I found myself getting completely sucked in by the actual gameplay of this game. I was completely immersed in this management sim of dispatching, and then as soon as it would switch back to more of the television show, I would get lost in that as well. So just everything in this game is fun, it's well made, the writing is funny, which is hard to pull off, especially in anything interactive like a video game. The voice acting is phenomenal. The characters are top notch, just 10 out of 10 pretty much across the board. And it's really what makes the show. You will fall in love with most, if not every single one of these characters in different ways, and just really enjoy the journey of seeing them all interact, picking your favorites, seeing where your story goes. This was just an excellent experience from start to finish, and I honestly think really my only complaint is that I wish that there were a few more episodes. Maybe 12 instead of 8 would have been so great, but definitely check this out. And there you have it. That is every game I played in January, and pretty killer start to the year, if I do say so myself. Some really good games this month. Looking forward to what I'll be playing in February. And yeah, planning to keep this going throughout the year. Might change the format here and there. I ended up not going scripted for this, obviously, and a little bit more off the cuff. So feel free to weigh in if you have any thoughts in the comments. And hopefully I will see you guys in February.